Welcome to the Give Back Lab. I'm your host, Daniela DeGrandi. You've entered a space where bold voices, real stories, and unfiltered conversations come to life. Here in the lab, we're breaking bias, shifting thinking, and exploring the power of giving back through truth, vulnerability, and diverse perspectives. We celebrate diversity of thought and everything beautiful that makes us human. This isn't just talk, it's real, it's raw, and it's exactly the kind of space we need. We're unlearning, relearning, and evolving together. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at the Give Back Lab. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Dave Buzanco. David is a resilience expert. He is going to come and talk to us about a TED Talk that he's done and all of the things in his life that have contributed to those abilities and that journey. So Dave, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your TED Talk experience, what you learned from it, and how you apply that to your life and all of the fabulous things that you do?
Well, thank you, Daniela. Pleasure to be here today on the Give Back Lab. So I think the best place to start is, first of all, I know my LinkedIn profile says resilience expert. I hate the term expert, but it was available, so I took that tag. But I really despise the term expert because in business, we have subject matter experts. And in my mind, that's always represented the ultimate authority of something, of a topic. And I often have found over my experience of 38 years in business that usually somebody who calls themselves an expert has stopped learning. And it's a weird thing to say, but when you sometimes look at yourself as the authority figure, you tend to sort of get stuck in what you know. And so I like the term subject matter enthusiast. So SME for me doesn't stand for subject matter expert, it's subject matter enthusiast. An enthusiast is somebody who is actively engaged in the subject. So I have the humility to be able to understand that what I know today and what I believe today may not be true tomorrow. There might be a new piece of science that comes along that proves there's a better way. And I think if you lock your heels into one way of thinking and say, this is it, this is the only way, this is the truth, I'm not open to any other ideas, you get stuck in life. And that's kind of where I think we can talk today. I was saying before the interview, the one thing that I learned from my TED Talk experience, and it's kind of funny. I was trying desperately to be a TED speaker for years, and when I finally got my shot, it was during COVID, so it had to go to a virtual event versus an in-person event. So I never got the opportunity to stand, or at this point, I haven't had the opportunity to stand on stage, which I would absolutely love to do and have a chance to have a conversation with a live, living, breathing audience, because I think that just brings so much to the talk. But in preparation for that talk, you learn about through lines. You learn how to become a better speaker, and you learn how to tell a better story. You learn how to meet your audience where they are. But the point of a through line is this is the reoccurring theme that we're going to keep circling back to and building on. So in our conversation today, I'm going to talk about my VIP process for resilience, which I think is really easy for people to remember. It's just a VIP process, but it stands for vision, identity, and proof. And in my mind, there are multiple areas. There's four areas of your life that I think we all need to pay attention to be resilient. And I'm going to take it one step before that by saying that the definition for traditional resilience is bouncing back. And that's what kind of rubs me wrong about being an expert, is because if you only bounce back, that implies that you didn't learn anything and you're susceptible to falling back into the trap again of whatever got you stuck in the first place. When you think about any area of your life, you're either moving forward, you're stuck, or you're falling behind. And I would argue that people who are stuck and falling behind don't have the tool set to step back, reflect where they are, and ask themselves, are they continuously learning? Are they continuously moving forward? I actually read a really interesting article this morning. I subscribe to an AI newsletter because the business that I'm in now, my marketing agency, relies heavily on AI. and I'm constantly learning about the new tools that are coming up. And the big learning for today was that if you don't learn how to become a lifelong learner, even in AI, you're going to be out of a job and stuck and falling behind as of next week. And so I keep hearing this reoccurring theme of becoming a lifelong learner, which I thoroughly and totally believe in. Um, I think when you stop learning, you become less relevant. And that's a fear that a lot of people have, especially you and I are we're closer to the ends of our careers than we are at the beginning. And there's a fear of becoming made redundant. There's a fear of not fitting in. There's a fear of not feeling youthful. And somehow that should or might impact your opportunity to work in the future. But we have all these fears that we get sort of locked into. And unless you've got a process to follow to get yourself, or a strategy to follow to get yourself out of that position of being stuck or afraid, you're going to be there for a long time. And it's really, really hard. And I think, you know, today, today's younger generation may not be equipped with the tools that they're going to need mentally to be resilient. And again, resilience to me isn't just about bouncing back. It's about learning from the mistake so you can see it coming again, avoid it in the first place, and move forward without any pain or hassle. I think that's something that's really important. I mean, how many times do we make the same mistake twice because we didn't learn from the lesson, right? So that's
Right.
the through line today is vision identity proof, that VIP process. I'll go down whatever road, whatever story you want to hear, and I'll come back to, okay, so this was the vision. This is the identity that I had to follow. Here's the proof that it was either working or not. And if it didn't work, then I had to go back and iterate. And
Yeah.
and I think just having that mindset of this is a system. Everything that I'm doing in life is a system. And I need to be aware of the system. That's step one. And if you can step back and have perspective and go, okay, here's the system that I'm following, whether I like it or not. This is the system. You know,
And I love that you said this is everything that I do in life, because that so much applies to everything in life, right? Not just business.
oh,
Every
100%.
everything that you tackle, right? You have a vision, you have a goal, you have to identify what that is. You have to it's it is not just whether you're parenting and raising kids, or you're doing some extracurricular activities, your hobbies, your work, your relationships. I mean, that is a beautiful framework, and I love it. It's very concise, and in thinking. So you said you tried for a long time to get to be on the, on TED, right? And have no doubt that you will find yourself on a TED stage at some point, and I'm excited for that day for you. So tell me, what made you want to get there, and what made you start focusing on this VIP concept, right? How was the VIP concept born in yourself?
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So two questions there. One is TED and one is the concept. So,
yeah.
so let's start with the concept. Long story short, and this is a very long story made short. My father and his mother, my grandmother, both died from Lewy body or complications from Lewy body dementia. The last 10 years of their life were terrible. And if you talk to any doctor or a neurologist about those diseases or any type of mental decline disease, they often say these things are incurable. Here's some medication, we're trying to manage it, blah, 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 blah. What they never talk about is being proactive, because usually when they're talking to a family of somebody who has this disease, they already have the disease full on. The symptoms are there. It's only a matter of time. And so my dad played basketball his entire life, very active. I've got good athletic genes from my father. The problem with that was that he had a horrible diet. He didn't understand food and nutrition, as most people of his generation did not. Um, he maybe exercised in a way that wasn't beneficial for his body. And so when he was finally diagnosed with this disease, he actually lived 10 years longer than the doctor thought he would, because his heart wouldn't stop beating, which just made it worse and worse and worse and worse. So I got to go through that with my father, and my son and my daughter and my wife. We all went through this together with my dad, but my son in particular, he has a compassion gene that I think it skipped my generation. My mother had it tremendously, missed me, went to my son. That's just the reality of the situation. But my son would come with me to visit my dad in hospice, long term hospice, whatever you want to call it. And you know, in those moments with my dad when he was slightly lucid, you would get a glimpse of the old person, and then it would be gone. And I thought to myself that this cannot be my future. Why do the doctors not have any good advice? So the last meeting that I had with my father's neurologist, she was a wonderful woman. My mother had wheelchaired my father out of the office, and my sister and I were sitting in the room, and she said, "Do you have any questions?" And I says, "Yeah, how do I not end up like that?" And she looked at me, and she didn't know at this point, that I had an athletic background, that I was doing endurance sports. She just said, "Crosswords are for entertainment. Exercise is brain food. Look it up." Now, she didn't expect that I would look it up. That was just an off the cuff remark. But if this is who I am, I'm curious. I'm a natural learner. I'm a lifelong learner. So I went, okay, what does that mean? And then I went on to watch some TED Talks with some very famous neurologists who basically said, look, here's the thing about Alzheimer's and dementia is that even though it might be familiar, which means it runs in your family, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it and it's going to debilitate you and you're going to end your life prematurely. What that means is actually, I think the number is less than 1% globally of people who have familiar, actually it's 0.0001, something like that, of people who actually have familiar Alzheimer's or dementia. They're going to get it no matter what. And they usually get it in their 30s. And there's a small tribe in South America that have this.
Hmm.
And they're the baseline. And nobody else around the world seems to have familiar Alzheimer's or dementia. What we have is a food system and a lifestyle that lends itself to disease, right? So being a natural learner, watching my dad go through this and asking myself, how do I not let my kids and myself suffer the same fate, um, became the quest. And trying to understand that and understanding that exercise is brain food. The best way this was ever described to me was exercise is like miracle grow. It's brain food, right? And the more you exercise, the idea is you create this thing called BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factors. When you exercise the right way, create the right conditions to create new brain cells, you're always, no matter what your age is, you can always create new brain cells. Well, if you keep adding to brain cells, and even though that disease might be sitting there taking down some brain cells, the idea is do this your entire life, be healthy your entire life, and hopefully you outrun the disease, period.
Right.
And they never talk about prevention. There's
Right.
two or three doctors that I've seen online do YouTube or do TED Talks who talk about the actual science behind BDNF. It's a thing, it's real, but the problem is most people would rather take a pill than get off the couch and exercise.
Right.
And I'm what you might call a unique, difficult person. I'm stubborn. And I said to myself at 40, 220 pounds is not cool. I've already had a health scare. That's what sort of kickstarted everything. And then I went through this with my dad and I went, this is not the legacy I'm leaving for my kids,
Yeah.
period. And off I went. And I started becoming an endurance athlete. And one thing led to another. It was never far enough. And multiple Ironmans later. And still to this day, my last half Ironman was in July, 2 months ago.
Wow.
And I've done a half Ironman with my son and his friends. I've influenced a lot of people. I've got a friend in India right now who just celebrated doing his first Olympic Iron or his Olympic triathlon, which is no small feat in India because there's not a lot of water to swim in.
Right.
So,
Right.
good on him. But yeah, I just like being an advocate, talking about these experiences, and you know, I thought that the TED stage would welcome me with open arms, but it seems like I've talked to many TED speakers, many TEDx speakers. It seems like every TEDx organizer has an agenda
Mm.
and they want to work with local people. Unfortunately, I live by Niagara Falls. I was traveling to Rochester, New York to do auditions. I was traveling well north of Toronto to do auditions. I don't like the idea of having to travel 3 or 4 hours. to potentially get a gig. And the actual TEDx that I got was, believe it or not, of Corpus Christi, Texas, because everything was being done virtually. It opened up the world.
Right.
But at the same time, I know that I was still learning, and I continue to learn to this day how to do and deliver a better talk. And yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the catalyst of all this was going through a health scare of my own, seeing decline, understanding that, most of our medical system is set up as triage for injury or symptoms. It's not set up to be preventative. And I would argue that if you listen to a lot of medical doctors talk, they get 1 day of nutrition class time. Everything else is your triage. You're treating guys coming in and pale with something. How do I deal with that?
Right, right.
Right?
Doctors are, I think they probably leave that to the nurses, right? The nurse
No,
practitioners, the
they don't. I actually gave a talk because I used to do quite a bit of speaking. I gave a talk once to a group of nurses,
uh-huh.
and they sat there dumbfounded in this conversation that I was having with them, just basically talking about nutrition and how, if they've never actually dug into our food system. Um, and my mother-in-law is quick to tell me all the time, her parents had bacon and eggs their entire life, every day for breakfast, and ended up living to be 95. And yeah, grandpa died of stomach cancer, but he was 95. I can argue that the quality of life they had for the last 20 years of their life was not good. They were, of the last generation, they were well old before their time, but the food system was definitely different. And
Right,
obviously, they were eating free. Like grandpa would go to the market, buy the chicken, come home, kill the chicken, take the feathers off it. That was a free range chicken. That wasn't being force fed anything in a chicken farm,
right.
right?
Very different
So
food supply.
yeah, so you've got a different food supply. So you can't have the argument, and I say it's an argument because I think people want to argue this point that, especially if they're in their 80s, which my parents and in-law, my mother and my in-laws are, that, this was good for my father. Why isn't it good for me? Well, the food system has changed.
Correct. Right,
Period. A
right,
piece of chicken that you're buying at the superstore today or any grocery store is not the same as the free range chicken. And nobody wants to buy the free range chicken because it costs twice as much. Why? I don't know. It's a
right,
chicken running around on the grass eating worms. Why is down the street? Why does that cost more? I don't
right.
know. But that's the reality. So I think we just have to not. What I learned a long time ago when I became a speaker is the more you get excited about a topic, let's call it
Mm,
maybe exercise, or let's call it sugar, whatever. Pick the evil of the day, or the thrilling thing of the day. The more you get on your pedestal and try to tell people because you're excited, the more you push them away.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
What you need to learn how to do as a speaker is engage people with curiosity. And if you
right.
inspire them with curiosity, then you've set them on a path to become a lifelong learner. That's the goal. So when I talk about the VIP process, I had this vision, and I still have this vision that at some point in my career, I will be a sought after speaker because I've gone through this lengthy journey of being resilient in my family life, my personal life, my business life, my financial life, my physical life, all of these different elements, we can wrap that VIP process on top of that. You know, I think I mentioned this the first time we met. I've been successfully married for 35 years. And I've got two healthy, fantastic kids who have learned a lot from the struggles my wife and I have gone through in our marriage. I'm not saying our marriage is right. It's perfect. It's the recipe people should follow. But what I will say is from the day we got married or engaged until to this day, um, we continue to be each other's best friend. And that's really, really helpful when things go sideways and you have to deal with crisis within the family. Um, we have a vision of where we're trying to get to. We're not there yet. So we're not comfortable sitting on our laurels. We're not where we want to be yet. So that the vision still exists. And sometimes the vision changes. I would argue that before I ever went to Europe on a vacation, I never really wanted to go to Europe. Now that I've been multiple times, it's like part of my future vision isn't just having a cottage in the Muskokas. It is traveling to Europe as well and experiencing culture and experiencing different people and different places and different foods. Um, so the vision, it's okay for the vision to change if it's changing in a positive light because of what you've learned and what you've experienced. The identity is, what are you doing every day to help yourself get to that?
Right.
Because here's where people get stuck, in my experience, is that we get comfortable where we are. And I'll use my wife as an example. She's an X-ray tech. She took on a job that basically pigeonholed her into doing one role for the rest of her career. She hates it because, you know what? Patients are not nice people.
Yeah.
Patients can be nasty people. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but for the last 30 plus years, my wife has hated her job and she has been stuck. She doesn't fall behind. She continues to learn about the job because she has to be a professional, to be an X-ray technologist, but and to be part of the health system. But she's stuck in a job she hates. So that, from a professional standpoint, has been soul sucking for her, and she doesn't know how to get out of it, because to get out of it requires work. It requires re-educating to doing something different. That's too much work for her. So this is, I'm not using my wife as a bad example. I'm saying there's a lot of people that go to work every day and come home and complain about the same shit for 30 years.
Yeah.
They're
Makes
stuck and they don't know how to get out of it. So, either ask yourself two questions. What am I doing with the money that I do bring home so that I can not have to do that job again? Am I putting that money to work for me, or am I just spending it? What am I doing? Like, job number one shouldn't be your job. Job number one should be, what do I do with my income that I bring home so that I can be the master of my own domain? That's number one. But even that, if you're not, like I think myself, my wife and I are both 59. We come from a generation where, hey, somebody makes money in the family. We've been double income our entire lives. You put the money in the bank, turn a blind eye, and everything's going to be good. Put some money in savings, it's all going to be good. Until you have a financial crisis like 2008.
Mm,
Nobody saw that coming, or maybe some people did, but there's a lot of people who got hurt financially from that. Maybe you have
hmm
a business dealing that goes south that costs you money. I mean, I was with my company, I was doing very well. We were having a great life, and then I got sabotaged by one of my customers at one of my largest retailers across the country, and it took me 2 years to find out what he did. It cost me, yeah, it cost me my future and set us back as a family substantially financially. And we continue to dig out of that from 2008 to this day. We're rebuilding our financial future. Not easy, but I recognized at a certain point I was stuck and I had to do something about it, because you step back with perspective, right? Vision, identity, proof. The vision is, you want to be this successful person. You want to have all these things that come along with success. You follow a certain path. That's the identity. What's the proof say is actually happening? And when the
Right.
proof starts to disagree with the path, you've got to iterate,
Right.
right? So there's a process for iteration. And that's basic, an if then hypothesis. If I continue to do this, then I expect this outcome to happen. But if this outcome doesn't happen, what do I have to do to change my process? And it's iteration. You just keep
Right.
trying good things, bad things, until you find the one thing that gives you that little increment of moving forward, and then double down on that.
Right.
I think people look a lot for the magic bullet that doesn't exist, and they want that immediate gratification, that immediate success. And if they don't get it, they may bypass doing the right thing. Like, the right thing might be sitting down for 30 minutes every day rather than scrolling through Instagram and taking an online course about money management.
Mm,
30
right.
minutes a day. That's all it is.
Right.
30 minutes a day.
Right.
What buy the book, and I'm sure it exists, Investing for Dummies. Actually,
Right.
I know it exists because I've seen it. And
I'm
and
sure it does.
like pick an area of your life where you see that you're not moving forward, and you want to be moving forward, and start educating yourself. Become a lifelong learner and make sure you're educating yourself. If you're feeling sad and lonely because all of your friends don't seem to be around you very much anymore, or they've moved on and you haven't, you know, make a list of your top 10 people you would like to be friends with, or you'd like to better your relationship with. And one by one, um, every week, send them an email. Hey, man, just thinking about you. Hope everything's going great. You would be amazed at what conversation that might open up.
Right.
right? Like just emotionally feel good about yourself by moving forward with your personal relationships, move forward with your professional relationship. Again, I read that article this morning, which made me laugh because that's what the mantra 6 years ago was, lifetime learning. For somebody to be coming out today saying, you better be a lifelong learner, you're going to fall behind. It's like saying, hey, smoking's bad for you. We knew that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? But yet people continue to smoke. So people will continue to do the wrong things.
Right. And a lot of this is grit and drive, right? I think that a lot of people they get stuck, right? Some of it is, I hate the term laziness because sometimes it's not lazy. Sometimes it is. But most of the time it is people get stuck in a cycle of depression or a cycle of not even a full-on depression, but like a woe's me, right? Like
Yep.
and that usually comes through burnout, through career students, right? Kids go to college, they go freshman year, they're, partying like they're free. And then, reality hits sophomore year and they start to get a little burnout. And we do that in careers where we give all of ourselves and then you hit a little burnout and it's like, I just want to sit here. But I love the way that you just put it. It's 30 minutes a day. And instead of scrolling Instagram, TikTok, you know, I love that. Be intentional. Be intentional in what you want to do and just chip away at it, right? Just like with exercise, right? It's easy to say, I don't want to go to the gym today. I'm just going to do this other thing. But you don't have to go to the gym to exercise. If you don't feel like going to the gym to exercise because your social battery's been depleted because you worked all day and whatever the case is, go for a walk in your neighborhood. Go for a walk around the park. Be with nature. Do
Hmm.
some push ups in your house if it's snowing or raining. So I think that committing to ourselves as humans is very difficult for us. I think that committing to other people is easier because then we're delivering a service of some sort, an obligation, and we're getting some kind of gratitude or some kind of reaction back. When we commit to ourselves, unless we pat ourselves on the back and say, good job, and acknowledge that, we don't have that peace. And I think that's important, right? I think that it's important that we acknowledge ourselves and are proud of ourselves, right? A lot of people like to talk about don't be selfish, don't be selfish. And I don't think about selfish, I think about selfful, right? If the plane's going down and you don't put on your mask first, you can't help everybody else. And I know that in my generation, we talk about our children a lot. We talk about, what the heck happened? We would never have gotten away with this. They do live in a different world than when we grew up. I mean, the world is vastly different. Expectations are different, costs are different, everything's different. Um, so they're
except
living in a
except for
different,
wages.
except for wages, exactly, on the nose. Um, and so we do live in a different world, but I think that from a human perspective, we have overcompensated in some ways so much for things that maybe our wounded child didn't have or wished we had more of. I mean, I know I have, and I've spoken to many people who feel this way, that we've overcompensated not knowingly. And now we have this generation that maybe isn't as gritty, maybe isn't as willing to jump in and be scrappy and figure it out, right? But I
Mhm.
think that scrappy is a great term for me to describe that to for me to understand this VIP, because you have to be a little bit scrappy in order to be able to be okay with pivoting along your journey,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes you got to pivot and you got to be scrappy, you got to have some grit, you got to be determined. learn not only from the lessons that you learned, but also learn from those around you who made the same mistake, who made mistakes,
Yeah.
maybe not the
Y-
same mistakes,
You
right?
don't have to be the only person, right? You don't have to be the only person making mistakes. You should
Yeah,
be able to lift your head. It's kind of funny. I'm going to touch on three things you talked about: grit, selfishness, and happiness. Um, and I was growing up, I loved watching the World Series.
okay,
I loved watching the NBA finals. I loved it. But most people love it because of the competition. What I loved about it is after the competition was over, I wanted to see how people behaved. I wanted to see how winners behaved and I wanted to see how losers behaved. And I wanted to try to learn from that. And that's really strange. And I know it's strange, but I knew that in my life, it wasn't always going to be sunshine and roses.
yeah,
I knew that those guys, like you're talking about, when you're talking about the World Series, the Super Bowl, name a professional for sport, you're talking about the 1% of the 1%, right? Who are fortunate enough to be in that position. And if they got there this year but lost, they want to try to somehow get back next year. And what do they need? Take the last 2 years in the NHL, right? Florida or Tampa and Edmonton. What does Connor McDavid need to do to win a Stanley Cup? He is arguably the best player on the planet right now in the NHL, and he does not have the supporting staff or team around him and the good fortune, the right mix to get him over the finish line to get the Stanley Cup. So, how is he going to behave? What is he going to do? What is he going to say? How is he going to move forward next year despite crushing defeat? And I think in sports, it's a great metaphor because I think if you look at any sports, you see that there are people who will cry and whine and complain and point fingers. And there are people who will go, okay, that sucked. That really sucked. But I got to pick myself up, learn from that so it doesn't happen again, and move forward. Those are the clues that I'm looking for. That's what drives me personally. I know that's not for everybody. It's kind of funny. My wife is not built that way. She wants to be entertained. I want to learn. Nothing wrong with that. That's just who she is as a human being. My son is more like my wife in some respects. It's kind of funny. You've got kids, I know. You kind of see the one resembles mom, one resembles dad in
mhm.
certain areas. And as the older they get, you start to see, oh yeah, that's like your mother. Oh, that's like me. And it's really not cool to point it out, but you sit there and go, yeah, okay, I know where that came
Yeah,
from over X number of years of living. But I want to touch on three things. So grit, selfishness, and happiness. So grit, to me, grit is you went through something really hard and maybe it didn't work out in your favor, but grit is about saying, okay, I'm not quitting. I need to learn from this. And I like seriously need to learn from this. And I need to do a better job. I may not have more time in the day to train. I may not have more time in the day or money to give, whatever it might be, but maybe my surrounding support need encouragement and inspiration. Maybe I'm not doing a good enough job with that. Maybe if all I'm ever doing is complaining about how shit everybody else is and how shit my job is and how shit the situation is, maybe that's negative and detrimental to me getting to where I want to be. If the
uh,
vision is to hoist the Stanley Cup, we all got to be pulling the boat together. You're a rowing mom, you get it. The crew's got to be pulling together. There's no I in crew.
no, no, I
So,
ain't crew.
you don't want to get shot out of the boat. So, I mean, and that's exactly what happens to bad crews, right? Somebody catches a crab and over the off the
Oh,
boat they go, and everybody laughs and laughs. But the point is, grit is about again the vision is we all want to get to this place. The identity, the how we trained to get there. Something was off. Something could have been better
right.
that we could have done differently. What is that thing? That's the proof. Going back and doing a forensic analysis of what did we just do that worked and what did we just do that didn't work. So that's the grit part of it. Talk about selfishness for a minute. So I'm an Ironman triathlete, have been for the last 18 years. 58 years old, 59 years old next month, and I feel like I'm 25. So I'll just tell people right off the hop, this has been my fountain of youth, um, and I've inspired a lot of people around me, all of my family members, to live a healthier life, which I think in the long run will serve us to fill in that vision of healthy, happy older people, not old sickly people. So
Yeah.
that's part of the vision. That's why we do what we do every day, not to cross finish lines, but to have better quality of life as we grow older and happiness. So when I started doing Ironman and I was competing as a fairly competitive age group athlete, and my dad was going through his thing, I'm like, I'm looking for happiness. Somewhere in this mixture, at some point, I want to feel happy because I don't feel happy. There's just too many things going on that I can't control. I don't understand. I want to feel happy. And I thought when I crossed my first Ironman finish line that I would feel this immense sense of happiness. And I can remember vividly running across the finish line, having made several mistakes in the race and almost getting disqualified for not paying attention. Long story. I won't get into that today. Um, Turning around, looking at the clock, and within 3 seconds of crossing my first Ironman finish line, looked at the time. It was 14 hours. No, it was 13 hours, just under 14 hours. So it's called 13 hours, 59 minutes, some odd seconds. My initial first reaction wasn't, wow, you're an Ironman. Good for you. It was, how can I be better? 14
Eh,
hours is a long time. I should have been better. I made so many mistakes. Like immediately, what I did was I set the goalposts for what happiness was crossing that finish line, and I changed it. I moved it over here. So I never let my brain settle in to feel happy. I remember being in Louisville and literally the next day working up the courage to say to my wife, I want to do this again. And where most people are, complete, and you can't walk if you've done it right. You can't walk for 2 days after this thing. And if you've done it right. And yeah, I remember saying this to my wife, I got to do this again. That was horrible. And
So,
so,
just to put
yeah,
that in context, because that's very important for those of us listening that do not understand what an Ironman is, because you just said you ran a race for 14 hours, right?
yeah,
Um, and at 40 years old,
that was 45 when I did Louisville.
at 45 years old, you
Yeah.
ran a race for 14 hours.
Yeah.
Explain, just to give some context of
Yep.
what that means.
And that's something I should have done because I was the lead age group athlete for Triathlon Ontario because I live in Canada, in Ontario. And my job was to go out to marathons and explain to marathon runners what a triathlon is and why they should look at doing triathlon versus running 7 days a week for the rest of their lives. The point behind that is low impact activities will lead to a better quality of life versus constant impact activities, which is running. But a full Ironman is a 4 kilometer swim. I don't know the mileage conversion. I
It's
apologize
okay.
because I'm in
It's
Canada.
okay.
We're metric. So it's a 4K swim followed by a 180K bike ride followed by a 42K run. So you're basically taking, um, throwing a marathon onto a very, very long day already. And you have 17 hours to finish the race. Each discipline has a time cutoff. If you don't make the time cutoff, you don't get to advance into the next discipline. And the biggest challenge that most people have with an Ironman is the swim. I didn't know how to swim until I started training for an Ironman. If you haven't drowned in your life yet, you think you can swim. Not the case. Not the case at all. And then, fortunately for me, I live by the Welland Canal, which joins Lake Ontario and Lake Erie together for
Uh-huh.
shipping. And there's 3 versions of the canal. And as sort of we move on to bigger ships, older canals get sort of decommissioned. One is kind of like a creek now. One is a recreational waterway, which has become almost an international basin for triathlon, rowing. We have a number of great features, water-related sport features here in our area. But when you go out and you swim train in a pool, it is completely different from swimming in open water because in open water, there are no lines on the bottom of the water basin. You can't see what's underneath you. Sometimes you swim through weeds in the water that feel like snakes because you've seen a water snake on the shore, and you have to deal with panic attacks. Sometimes you're going to get
Yes.
swam over in a race. People inadvertently are going to hit you with their elbow in the head because they can't see you. We're 2,000 people are rushing in the same direction in the water
Oh
that's
my
churning up like a
goodness.
blender. You've got to be smart about what you do. I actually, in that first race in Louisville, short story, there was a gentleman from Buffalo, New York, who went down to do his first Ironman, same Ironman as me, Louisville 2011. He took his young family down, like I took my family down. and he started the race about 5 minutes ahead of me. And just after I jumped into the water to start swimming, um, my wife said they stopped the race for a second. Now, as I was, it was kind of a staggered start. One by one, you would jump into the water, swim up this canal, around this little island, and come out by the big bridge in Louisville, out of the Mississippi River, and off you go. But in this basin that we all jumped into, it was like a little marina, and at the end of the marina, there was a sheriff's boathouse. And as I was going past the sheriff's boathouse, going down the dock to jump in the water, there was a big commotion going on. And I really wasn't sure what was happening. I thought something was happening on shore because they were running up on the shore. Didn't think anything of it, jumped into the water. As I'm swimming, I'm seeing a big commotion going on in the water, a bunch of people hanging on to one of the paddle boards because you're allowed to hang on to a paddle board so long as you don't advance yourself forward. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, so many people are having panic attacks. This is insane. They must not have trained properly because that's the first thing you do in open water swimming. You learn to have panic attacks. You learn how to deal with a panic attack so that you can keep moving forward. You have
Right.
strategies. Unfortunately, this gentleman, I think his name was Rob Weska, had a panic attack that led to a heart attack, and he had a heart attack in the water and died.
Oh,
And I
God.
only found out about this when I got home because a friend of mine said, who worked in Buffalo, "Hey, I heard in the Buffalo News some guy died at your race." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I didn't hear anything about that." And then we pieced it all together. Yeah, they were pulling him out of the water. That's what was happening as I
Oh,
was
my
swimming by.
goodness.
So bad things happen to good people if you're not prepared. That's the bottom line you can take away from that. It was horrible. But in any endurance sport, bad things that you're putting yourself, you sign away with this as I know I could die today. Like
Mm,
that's the kind of sport we do. But the reverse of that is if you're prepared for it, right, then you can have one of the most amazing days of your life. So I'll come back to that. Long story short, I went looking for happiness, didn't find it because I didn't realize I was moving the goalposts psychologically of what happiness was. There's a gentleman by the name of can't think of his name. Wrote the Happiness of Sean Aker. I think he's a professor at Harvard. I think, but he wrote the book The Happiness Advantage. Sean Aker, and not in his book, but in a talk that he gave to Google, he gave a definition for happiness. He said, we were all raised with this idea that as soon as we get the car, get the house, get the wife, get the husband, get the job of our dreams, get the cottage, get whatever, then we'll be happy. But as soon as you get that, you immediately want more. It's like a
right.
sales goal. You want to hit your first $1 million in sales. And as soon as you get that, the dopamine is flowing, the adrenaline is flowing, and I want to get on the phone and make another
Yeah.
$1 million. That was
Yeah.
awesome. So you didn't give
Yeah.
yourself a chance to appreciate what you did. That's how we're born and
Right.
raised. But he said, here's a new definition that I want you to try on. He said, happiness is the joy you feel striving for your full potential every day. Now, that to me made sense because it wasn't about crossing a finish line. If I keep doing the right things, I will continue to have the kind of experiences that I expect to have because I'm healthy and happy. But if I always if I hang the happiness definition on, I need to hit a certain time in that race, or I need to, hit a certain milestone in my business. I know it's like when you're shooting for the stars, if you hit the moon, that's good. You're out there. You're putting yourself in play. You're moving forward. So the idea of being happy, give yourself the grace. If you're out there and you're struggling today, it's not about I've got to make 100 sales calls today or I did a shit job. It's
Mm,
no, if you made 90 calls because you ended up having 10 really good conversations that
right.
took more time,
Right.
you're in the game.
Right.
Give yourself the grace to be happy because you worked hard. You did what you could today. You reached your potential today,
Right.
and that's I think that's a huge miss for a lot of people
I
who
love
who
that.
who are I don't know. There's so many people right now that are in therapy that are on medication for this, that, and the other. I suppose I'm not a therapist or a doctor. I can't speak to it. I've never had a therapist. I've had a lot of tough times in my life. I've seen a lot of things that are you can't unsee,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Accidents, people getting killed, things happen, bad things happen to good people. But I just seem to think that you have to equip yourself with the tools to ask yourself, how do I move forward from this? And if you don't have those tool sets, That's what a therapist is for. And hopefully they're giving you the tools you need, even if it's just a voice to talk to or a person to talk to. Hopefully
Right.
they're giving you the tools you need, the strategies to move forward and feel better about your current situation. Um, so I know I'm unique, Daniela. I talk a
Yeah.
lot. I know I'm unique.
Yeah. I love it. I l-
But the
I love it. It's real world insight into this is you didn't have a cushy life, right? You worked for everything that you have twice, maybe three times, right? You started a health journey at 40
Mhm.
and then ran your first Ironman at or participated. Can't even just say run because you run, swim, run, what is it? Run, swim,
Swim,
and
bike, run.
bike.
Swim, bike, run.
Swim, bike, run. Um, at 45, right? That's unheard of while raising a family
Yeah.
and managing a marriage, which is also not easy, right? You make it sound like, we have a great marriage and we've been married for 45 years. I'm sorry, we've been married for 35 years and we're best friends, and that's phenomenal. But relationships come with problems.
Yeah.
Work comes with problems. Kids come with problems. Life is nothing if it doesn't have problems. It'd actually probably be pretty boring. I think what I'm hearing from you is we have to embrace those problems head on and set goals for ourselves to work through and address them where we can, right? Be
Mhm.
more proactive in your life so that problem doesn't grow, or it may never appear, right?
Yeah.
To live intentionally is what
I
I
like
hear,
that.
right?
Yeah, I
It's
like the
about
idea of living
living
in.
intentionally.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think I'm not. I'm a different person. I'm built differently than a lot of people mentally. I don't mean that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just I know who I am. I know that most people will never do the things that I do. I know that your belief system is an amazing thing. You believe what you're currently capable of based on what you've currently done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you go out, and I remember because I was a runner when I started at 40, just because I was trying to get heart healthy. I was like everybody else, burning the candle at both ends, running a business. All those things you mentioned are taking a toll on your life. And if you don't start investing in yourself, that's the physical part of resilience, then that house of cards is going to collapse real quickly on you and not have a good outcome. So, I sit here and think to myself, I was very fortunate that I started down this path. I learned a lot of things the hard way. But I said to myself, when I turned 40 and started running, I said, the doctor gave me two choices: either go on heart and cholesterol medication for the rest of your life or lose the weight and get in shape. So that was the marching cry. And I hate pills. Didn't want to go down that path. So I wanted to try the natural way, but that's just a start. That had nothing to do with nutrition. That had nothing to do with sleep and your sleep hygiene. There are so many amazing people that I've met who are all on their pedestals trying to share great information with the world. The problem that I see is they're doing it by telling, not by inspiring. And
Right.
so that becomes the challenge for me: is how do I inspire people to become curious, to become a lifelong learner, to learn about, you know, all the aspects of their life that are going to lead to happiness. And at the end of the day, if you can honestly say to yourself, I did everything I could do today. I worked hard. I learned how to work hard a little better. And when I say work hard, I mean sometimes when I say work hard, that just means I didn't screw around. Like I know what looking busy looks like at work
Right.
as opposed to actually being productive.
Right.
So the goal, I think, with anybody at work is how can I be more productive by doing less work? Well, that doesn't get handed to you on a silver platter. That's something you got to figure out. That requires trial and error, and that requires education, and that requires whatever it requires to move forward. But the reality is, if you can sit back every day and go, but I took a step forward today. I didn't know about this yesterday. I know about it now. So I can't cry about what happened yesterday. I can only cry about what I did today. And if I decided to go piss away 4 hours doing something that was unrelated to being productive in any way, shape, or form, um, if today was the one day a month that you need to do that to blow off some steam, God bless you. But if
Right.
that's your daily lifestyle, maybe that's part of the problem. If you feel like you're stuck or falling behind. So
Right.
reevaluate what you're doing with your time. You'd mentioned relationships are not easy. I will tell you that amongst Ironman triathletes, men and women have a very, very high divorce rate because what you're doing is you're becoming very, very selfish with your time. You have to be selfish with your time to be disciplined enough to finish that race because it's a beast. But part of the learning curve is asking yourself, how do I be selfish with my time to be disciplined to do the activity, but also be aware that that leaves very little energy for the people around me. And I'm going to become a bear if I do this again. So how do I make that work for everybody else? The second Ironman that I did, I looked at my wife's first experience in Louisville, which as a spectator was not fun by any stretch of the imagination. She literally saw me in that 14 hours, maybe a minute
Mm,
between here he goes
mm.
out for the swim. Here goes onto his bike.
I'm a
Here he goes
crew
on his
mom.
bike. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's
I get
nothing.
it.
You get it, but yeah, there they go. And then we're not
Exactly.
going to see him for
They're
6 more hours, and then there he goes.
my-
And like, and in between all that, she was struggling because in Louisville they threw them all onto it's like 100 degrees out with humidity. They throw all the spectators who want to go to the turnaround point on the bike. They throw them into a school bus that they lined up for 2 hours to get onto the school bus to get out to this little town where they're selling bottled water at this point for your kids for $5 a bottle.
Oh,
Like
good
they're
Lord.
just totally taking advantage of the situation. And then you got to wait again. Like I had no idea what my wife's day was like. And she says, I don't need me to complain because I know you just did something hard, but let me tell you about my day. And okay, I heard that. So in saying that I want to do another Ironman, I thought, well, she's not going to want to be part of that. And then I thought, but wait a minute. What if we went to Cozumel and did an Ironman there and stayed at a
Uh-huh.
resort? And I said, look, Rob, and I says, you don't have to come out and watch anything that you don't want to. You can stay at the resort all day long.
Aw.
And we've got good friends who've come along to a few of these events with us. And I've got a great picture of while I'm doing the Ironman. There's like, I think there were about 12 of them at the pool having a party at the resort, and they came out with their cocktails to cheer me on as I went by, and they immediately went back and
Oh,
continued the
I
party.
love it. I love it.
And it was to me it was so much fun because I had fun doing what I was doing. I made it fun for them. It wasn't a chore for them, and at that point, everybody was receptive to if Dave wants to do this again,
Yeah.
I might be open to it. Now, bear in mind, I've done 3 full Ironmans. The next one I did was in Mont Tremblant in Quebec. And there for my wife, again, thinking about my partner, putting her needs a little bit before my own. Normally, I would just get a hotel room wherever. But I thought, well, what if, in that race that just the two of us went, I thought, well, what if it's rainy that day? What is she going to do? And so in Mont Tremblant, the finish line, it's a ski resort, and the finish line is at the base of one of the ski lifts. And there's these beautiful European style hotels that line the ski lift. So I got us a hotel suite with a balcony that was covered, so that if it was a shitty day outside, she could sit there and watch the world go by and have a glass of wine and just enjoy.
I love
And
it.
again, you're being selfish with your time, but you're being selfless in thinking about the people around you and how is what you're doing going to impact their experience. So, that's and even with the half Ironmans that I do. So I've done about 15 half Ironmans. Every year I do at least one race. So I've been doing this for 18 years. The
God
half
bless.
Ironmans
Yeah.
like this is my last one here. I did Ironman Muskoka 70.3 in July, so 2 months ago. And one of the thrilling things for me about that, not unbeknownst to me, my daughter is a brewmaster at Lake Bay's, got the job in February of this year, and they're the title sponsor of this race.
Oh,
So, and the
awesome.
bike course goes right past where her brewery is, where she works. So I've got this phenomenal picture of, I said, I'm going to stop. I wanted to stop and have a beer with her, but it was too early in the morning and the liquor license wasn't open till 11 o'clock.
Fantastic.
But I've just got this great picture of me pulled over at the brewery with my daughter and her dog and just all giving each other a big hug. And because I'm super stoked and proud of my daughter for the young woman she's become. She's gone through some adversity, and Her first career after university didn't turn out the way that she thought it would. Very objectified in the workplace. I was disgusted by what I saw going down. And during her university career, um, she was working for a big microbrewery here in the Niagara area and made a lot of contacts in the industry, really loved the idea of understanding how micro beer gets made. Went back to school, retrained, became a brewmaster, and now is up in Muskoka, which is our favorite part of the world to vacation, which is about 3 hours north of Toronto. And she now lives the dream. She doesn't, she's living in Muskoka
It's
24,
great.
like 12 months a year, and loving every minute
Fantastic.
of it. And her life, to be honestly, so her new boyfriend is an arborist, a fantastic guy. She got out of a very difficult relationship here, started a clean slate up there. She's with this fantastic guy, and they were up cutting down a tree at his family cottage because he's an arborist, is what he does for a living. And she's sending us videos on Saturday, all day long, of Matt up in the tree doing this, doing that, and the dogs running around having a great time. And I said to my wife,
She's
I've
living
not
life.
seen, I've not seen Caitlin this happy in ever.
I
Like,
love it.
like happy. So she has found her definition of happiness is just being present
Yeah.
and doing a job that's fulfilling. And what you do with your money when you bring it home, that's the next step of don't complain about how much you make, complain about what you do with what you make.
Right.
Figure that part out. So be happy
Right.
at what you do, but she's got the runway, right? She's not 30 yet, so
Yeah.
she's got the runway of years to let amortization do its job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so again, that's the next part. Don't complain about where you are. If you love what you're doing, don't complain about the money. Figure out what to do with the money you bring home.
Right.
So
I love that.
anyway,
I love that she
that's
learned from your wife and decided, even though she committed to university to learn this thing, that it was not for her. I
yeah,
love that
that
she pivoted, and that's awesome. I wish her the best. I think that's phenomenal.
yeah, and
She's
that's
living
the thing.
intentionally. I guess,
Yeah,
really the this conversation has been so inspiring for me. Thank you so much. And it really is about living intentionally, living
I think
with
so.
purpose and determination every
Uh,
single day, right?
yeah, but I think a lot of times people don't know where to turn. And I think that's a big hard piece because um, you'll go to the bookstore and you're going to see there's books on, I quit sugar. I don't eat sugar anymore. And there's books on, hit workouts versus endurance sport. You've got experts in every field, in every career, telling you one's over here left and one's right. And you have to, I believe you have to take everything with a grain of salt. You
Yes.
have to be open to learn, open to listen, open to learn, and take away from things that make sense to you based on the way things have been presented. I would agree that the sugar industry followed the tobacco industry's playbook for marketing, and we've been sold a bill of goods that the old food pyramid was built by the food industry to
Hmm.
support the way that they want us to consume food. So you can either get mad about that or you can learn what your alternatives might be. You can learn how to eat in a way that's going to serve you better. But
Right.
you've got to make that decision.
Right.
What's right for you?
Right. It's a very individual choice. What are your allergies? What are your
Yep.
disabilities? It doesn't mean that you can't find a path that's straight for you, right? Go
Yeah.
educate yourself, learn, talk to some people, have some conversations outside of, just specific experts, because you're right. An expert is in that niche space. And so they only know what they know, not only, but mostly know what they know. And then to give you an alternate perspective, you have to find another expert and do the
Mhm.
knowledge hunting yourself. Hunter gather, right? Go hunt for the knowledge, gather it all up, and make the decision that's best for you as an individual. Well,
So
I would like to thank you so much. This has been such a pleasurable conversation.
before you sign me off, I want to give your listeners one challenge.
Yes, yes,
Just because
absolutely.
we're talking about food, I challenge you to go and figure out how many grams of sugar is acceptable based on whatever the current regulations are where you live, what your governing body is telling you, what's acceptable for the amount of sugar you should be consuming every day. Because then I want you to go into your pantry and I want you to get a piece of paper and I want you to write down how many grams of sugar are in the foods that you consume every day. This is the one thing that we don't do often enough in North America is really consider the food that we're eating. If it's packaged, it tends to be problematic. If it's fresh, it tends to not be problematic. So, go look at how many grams of sugar are in the things that you're consuming, and then ask yourself, okay, is because I know that the World Health Organization, I think it was like 37 grams of sugar last time I checked, is what the research said is what's acceptable is as far as what you should be consuming safely. I think in the United States, Michelle Obama put out a different number that was it was severely down, but I think it was like 48. It wasn't quite what the World Health Organization was saying. But when you go do that activity and you write down the grams of sugar and everything that you're eating, what you're learning is where all the hidden sugars are in your foods.
Mm,
So what happens to sugar in the body and why people get so upset about it is because sugar that gets consumed without any dietary fiber quickly gets translated and stored as fat, as fuel for your body. But we don't live in a feast and famine world anymore. 7-Eleven is just down the street. We can get whatever
yeah,
calories we need. So we overconsume calories and we overconsume hidden sugars in those foods. And what we are sold as a healthy food is not necessarily good for us. Is it all natural? Yeah, I can go buy, orange juice at the grocery store, but understand that that orange juice has been stripped of all of its dietary fiber, and it takes four of them, to make 1 cup of orange juice. It could be all natural, but ask yourself this question: when's the last time you sat down and ate 4 whole oranges?
right.
As a kid, I would drink probably Oh, I would take a glass, maybe 4 of these glasses a day of orange juice. Orange isn't good for you. How can it be bad? Keep drinking it, keep drinking it, keep drinking it. Do
Full
you
of
know the
sugar.
amount of do you know the amount of sugar that we drink on a daily basis is insane. But
Yeah.
so I'm not trying to tell you don't drink orange juice. I'm not trying to tell you don't drink a Coke. I drink Coca-Cola where when I train on a run course because I know that sugar, when your body is depleted of all of its energy and your heart rate is at a certain elevation because you're doing the long endurance athletes, like go ask yourself, why is Coca-Cola on every marathon course in the world? That
Right.
is the number one fuel because sugar immediately does one of two things. It either gets used as energy or stored as energy.
Right.
So if you're not running a marathon, drinking that Coke isn't a great idea.
Right.
Drinking that glass of orange juice isn't a great idea. Or at least if you're going to drink a glass of orange juice like this, have 75% of it be water and color it with orange juice. And
Right.
then you're getting the water you need, but not necessarily the sugar. So that's the challenge. That's the inspiration. Go out and learn about the food you are eating and then just make informed choices. So
And
I'll
I
let you
would
sign off with
that's
that.
actually a great segue because I would love if you're amenable to have you back and do a conversation specifically about nutrition.
Yeah, I would love
Because
to.
I think that's really important, right? The nutrition, how it affects our brains, how it affects our body, how does it affect us as we age?
Mhm.
I have a few guests who are in women's health that want to come and talk about as women age. We don't talk about women's health a lot, menopause, things like that,
Yep.
right? Women's health is a taboo topic. And so I have some guests coming to talk about that. I would love for you to come and talk to us about all of the stuff that you have learned and the nutrition piece. As a regular guy, right? A regular guy who has taught himself these things. You're not a doctor, right? You have went and consumed information and done research and trial and error and examples that you've seen through your family and through genetic diseases that exist within your family and what you're doing to be preventative. I'd love to have a conversation on
Yeah.
nutrition around prevention.
Happy to
Um,
do it anytime.
so we will get that scheduled. Thank you so much for your time. This has been my honor, my pleasure having this conversation with you. And I will get the next one booked so we can do that.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today in the Give Back Lab. If today's conversation moved you, challenged you, or made you just feel seen, share it forward. That's how change begins. Until next time, keep showing up, keep speaking truth, and giving back in your own way. The lab is always open.